Hi again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm, and today I want to talk to you about plant propagation by division, which is in fact my favorite kind of propagation because as opposed to doing stem cuttings, which actually takes a bit of technical know-how, and you start with a very small plant, when you do division from existing plants, you're cutting them apart and you usually end up with a larger clump that is much closer to thriving in the garden. So division is fantastic, but normally people talk about doing division in the spring, early spring, or in the fall when the plants are much closer to dormancy. But there are three kinds of plants that they usually recommend for you to do right now in the middle of summer, at least in my climate it is. And the first one of those is daylilies, or hemerocallis. The second one is irises. This is the classic time where you get best success rates on dividing irises. And also for something like poppies, the oriental poppies, that tend to go dormant this time of year rather than in the spring or the fall, this is the right time to tackle the division on those. Now let's talk about division a little bit here as a method. Of all of the perennials you see lined up behind me here, this orange Nymphophia, the purple-leafed heuchera behind that, and the red flowering echinacea, all three can be divided. If you look at the ABCs of perennials, Stilbe, Brunnera, Campanula, Delphinium, all of those are good from division. In fact, you'd have to work hard to list the ones that aren't good for division. And that short list really is things that are woody, like lavender. So when we're talking about the ones that are good candidates for division, we're talking about herbaceous perennials, not woody perennials. So oftentimes people will include things like lavender or buddleia, butterfly bush, as perennials, but because they'll become woody, they wouldn't be great for division. Much like shrubs, they wouldn't be great for division. Other ones that aren't great for division are things like butterfly weed, that's Asclepias, or Baptisia, that have tap roots, and if you break those tap roots they can die fairly easily. So just that short list of things that are not the best for division. But for the rest of them, the life cycle of a perennial goes that crown, that spot where the roots are below that and the stems or the leaves are above that, that crown over time tends to just expand at the soil level, and when it's ready for division, it's actually sometimes can get a little bit woody or less productive in the center of that clump. That's the time to dig it up, cut it apart, and divide it into different clumps around your garden. I won't try to overcomplicate this issue because it's actually the simplest thing you could ever do. You dig it up and you cut it apart with a spade or with a knife, and then you're ready to put them back into the ground in a less stressful situation. Keep care of watering, maybe give it a little bit of shade, and that's all you have to do to be successful for division. So I went out to the garden and grabbed myself a clump of hemerocallis, or daylily. Came out as one big clump. Probably the easiest thing for me to do was just to leave it on the ground there and pry it apart with my shovel right there. But since I brought it up on the table to demonstrate for you, I'll show you a wide range of tools that you can use. You can use your hand pruners. I probably wouldn't use it on something like this with such big roots because it would be slow going. I have this weeding tool that's sharp on this edge here that I've used for division quite a lot. You can also use a trowel, but I think for this one here, I'm actually just going to use a pruning saw. That's going to be handy for getting a big clump like this to divide out into smaller pieces. And once I was most of the way through, you can see it pulls up a big clump like this, and I'm probably going to further divide this into three different clumps. This whole large clump here, I'll definitely have a large section to put back in the garden in the place where I took it from, and I may end up with 6 or 8 other clumps that I will either put around the garden, give away to friends, or just pot them for sale next year. So just finishing up on this clump here, I'm going to pry this one off of the front here. And you can see that what I have, good catch Jason, was now a section that has a good amount of roots on it, but also shoots or leaves at the top. And just to make it easy to handle and put back into the garden, I'm going to snip that back off at a length of about 6 inches there that you can see, and that is one successful clump. And again, I can pot that or put it back into the garden as is. Well, you can see I ended up with a total of 11 here, with the final one at the end here being large enough that I can put it back into the same spot in the garden and still have an impressive display for next year. The rest of them are varying sizes, but most of them should give a good display next year as well, wherever they go in the garden or whether I sell them on to other customers. Now that I have these divided out, I'm going to take this pot of just potting soil and dibble it out and stick this in, firm it up, and this will probably be rooting over the next couple of months and be ready for sale next spring, which is not a bad haul. Now, I did mention that with the hemerocallis, the iris, and the papavers, those are the ones that are classically mentioned for summer, whereas many other perennials, they talk about being better in spring or fall, owing to the plants being in less active growth and the conditions being a little bit milder. But the truth is, and many gardeners will tell you this, that be brave, be fearless, because sometimes plants just need dividing when you're handling them. If you were to dig a big clump out of the garden to move it for whatever reason, and you found that it called for division because it was very thick, you could do that at the same time and just take care of the conditions afterwards. This one here is a geranium that you can see is pushing itself off in 4 or 5 different heads here. And it does have really well established roots. You can even see the roots are starting to push out against the side of the pot here. So it probably calls for division right now and probably doesn't even need the saw to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just cut it apart with my pruners. See if I can do it that way. And I'm going to pull off this clump over here. And once again, if you see that it's come away with a good set of roots here and some crown or some shoots across the top, I could probably even, by hand, if I'm gentle enough, pull this apart and end up with 2 viable clumps just out of that half of the pot. And if I put these into potting soil and, again, gentle conditions, regular watering, a little bit of shade, even over the summer, they'll probably make it through just fine in the spring. So feel free definitely to experiment with your division. It's one of the funner parts of propagation. All right, if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop those in the comments below the video, and thanks so much for watching.